Good evening. Good evening. Feels like I'm here to host a party. What a great turnout. Good evening, everybody. There are a few seats up front. They're really good seats. If you're standing, don't feel badly about coming down and grabbing them. Well, thank you for joining us on a beautiful day. Our first evening event for the Department of Landscape Architecture. I'm Gary Hilderbrand, the Hornbeck Professor of Practice and the Chair of the Department of Landscape Architecture, and it's really a great, great honor to welcome our speaker, Dr. Kongjian Yu, tonight. I'll begin by acknowledging that the Harvard Graduate School of Design is located on the traditional and ancestral land of the Massachusetts, the original inhabitants of what is now known as Boston and Cambridge. We pay respect to the people of the Massachusetts tribe, past, present, and future, and we honor the land itself, which remains sacred to them. The school also recognizes the work of the Harvard University Native American program in cultivating the relationships that led to the creation of this acknowledgement. We have a large streaming audience tonight, and a quick reminder that there is live captioning available for the virtual audience. If you want to enable captions, click the closed captioning button at the bottom of your live stream window. I also like to invite you to an upcoming GSD public program on Tuesday next week, September 19th at 6:30. You could join us here for a public lecture by renowned architect Shigeru Ban, who will speak about his formal and humanitarian aspects of the work in his practice. And now, let me get to this evening's event. This is the Sylvester Baxter Lecture. It's supported by an endowment established in honor and memory of Sylvester Baxter. Baxter was a visionary advocate for landscape architecture and town planning, who, along with Charles Eliot, secured the passage of legislation that established the Metropolitan Park System of Greater Boston. So we honor this work, this seminal work, really, of public realm landscapes at the territorial scale. We all benefit from that work. Also tonight, I've asked our good friend Anne Whiston Spirn to join Kongjian and me on the floor after his talk for some reflections and to help with the question and answer. Anne Spirn is the Cecil and Ida Green Distinguished Professor of Landscape Architecture and Planning at MIT, where she teaches courses on ecological practice, landscape literacy, and photography as a form of inquiry. Thank you, Anne, for joining us tonight. Kongjian Yu is no ordinary polymath, if there is such a thing. He is, by any measure, one of the most prolific and influential landscape architects internationally, not only of his generation, but of many generations. If you pay attention to the weather, and I don't know how you couldn't, been a pretty hot week, you're aware of the tremendous urgency around the rapidity and the magnitude of change and the unprecedented catastrophes that we can confidently attribute to climate change today around the world. We've long been concerned about this, but it's more and more urgent. Like it seems more urgent as the weeks go by. It's an existential focus of the work in our department and has been now for some time. I'm constantly reminded in this of the urgency around environmental rescue during the time of my youth. We had Rachel Carson, we had Anne McHargue. Later, we had Al Gore giving a clarion call. All spoke with great urgency. The first time I heard Kongjian Yu speak about his scholarly work and his practice, I heard an urgency in his voice and in his motivations. This was 2 decades ago. But for him, the immense ecological damage he witnessed in his homeland, China, had shaped his calling. You'll hear about that tonight, and you'll hear urgency in his voice still. Kongjian Yu is professor and founding dean of Peking University College of Architecture and Landscape and founder and design principal of Turinscape. He took his Doctor of Design degree here at GST in 1995, studying with his primary advisor, our own legendary Carl Steinitz. Dr. Yu is the author of 20 books and more than 300 papers, and he's the founder and chief editor of the internationally awarded magazine Landscape Architecture Frontiers. He was elected International Honorary Member of the American Arts and Sciences, Academy of Arts and Sciences, that's incredible, in 2016, and he received IFLA's highest honor, the Sir Geoffrey Jellicoe Award in 2020, which celebrates a living landscape architect whose, quote, achievements and contributions have had a unique and lasting impact on the welfare of society, end quote. His projects have won maybe countless awards by now, but including a firm based in Beijing, 14 ASLA Excellence and Honor Awards. That's kind of an astonishing record. 7 WAF Best Landscape Architecture of the Year Awards. His most recent recognition, announced last month, the Cooper Hewitt National Design Award. Congratulations on that. It's amazing. That's something every landscape architect covets. Kongjian's guiding design principles are the appreciation of the ordinary, a deep embrace of nature, even its potentially destructive aspects like flooding. His thinking about ecological security patterns, as he calls it, help shape environmental protection efforts throughout China. And his promotion of the sponge city concept, which uses landscape to capture, filter, and store rainfall for future use and reduce flood risks, helped to spur the Chinese government to launch an ambitious sponge city campaign across the country. This is influential. Around the same time that I learned of his aims for environmental rescue, I learned another thing. It was kind of a surprise. I was on a design jury that reviewed his now widely admired project for Shenyang Architectural University in Liaoning province. I was honestly deeply impressed with the clarity, with the amazing intention of this project, and also the spatial brilliance of situating a university as a campus inside an agricultural water park. Who had thought of it? Who had the guts to do that? And it was stunning. The jury members all knew at this point that someone we'd thought of as a scholar, a thinker, an advocate, a knowledge producer, was, to be sure, also a remarkable designer, giving serious, expressive, and spatial qualities to the work. And ever since I saw that project, his projects have just become more compelling, more appealing, larger and more complex, and yet more visually and spatially enthralling. I had the privilege of visiting earlier this year a recent project completed during the pandemic in the very dense and immensely flat center of Bangkok, Benjakiti Park. Just a beautiful work. You'll see it tonight. Again, I'll say a working landscape of stunning beauty. Let's let Kongjian pick it up from there. My final word is this: Kongjian Yu is a genuinely warm and generous character. A lot of people know this about him. Once you meet him, you are his friend. It's pretty enduring. We are all grateful to be on the itinerary of your first adventure outside China since the pandemic. That's an honor. So thank you for being here. Thanks for being a great friend of the school, and welcome.
Thank you so much. Wonderful. So wonderful, Gary. Gary, so wonderful. Yeah, thank you so much. Such a high comment about as a student. I'm still a student here. Yeah. So respectful Peter Rowe and Spirn, all my heroes, and you are my heroes. for 28 years. And I mean, a week ago, 5 days ago, I was celebrating my daughter's wedding in Seattle, and she was born here when I graduated, when I get the certificate from Peter Rowe. Imagine 28 years, exactly 28 years. So it's so wonderful. And at that time, we have only 3 students from China. Today I can see 30 or even 40 students from China today. How dramatic is this a change? So my topic today is called adaptation. I'm not just talking about projects. You'll see many on the website, but how my learning, my education here can influence the landscape, in China. So it's political, cultural, and ecological design. My journey to heal the planet. So I was born in a small village. Here you can see, very small, tiny village. There's a big river. There's a White Sand Creek, it's a stream, White Sand Stream. It was in a basin, a small basin. You can see mountains surrounding your village, and it's a beautiful white sand river, stream. It was under the influence of monsoon climate. So every year you get a flood. Every year flood. I live with a monsoon flood every year. And this is a kind of landscape, but it was disappeared. It's disappeared. So this is a reference to what I remember when I was a kid. So 36 low dams, weirs, low dams that allow the water to be diverted into the villages, irrigate the farm, thousands of acres of farm. So I swam in the stream during the summer, and I took care of a buffalo. When I was a kid. I spent 17 years in the village with a diameter about 20 kilometers in size. So it's not go beyond 20 kilometers in 17 years, you can imagine. So the stream swells during the monsoon season. And that's the time the whole village got excited during the monsoon season, because the big fish, the big carp, jump over the low dam, swim upstream to get reproduced into the rice paddy or in the pond or in the wetland. There are abundant of them. And that's the time we can catch the fish. So monsoon flood was not always, it's nothing new for us. Climate change always change in China, right? We have very dry season, we have very wet season, Once at the age of about 10 years old, I fell into the swarmed stream by accident, but survived. You know why? Because the vegetation slowed down the current. And I scrapped these the willow trees. If not the trees, I would have died. But today, the creek, the stream, totally transformed. You can see here, become concrete channel, and not just my small stream. Everywhere in China, just like that. In the last 40 or 50 years. Now this is exactly the same white sand stream. We called, a hydrological engineer, try to keep the land safe, try to protect the village. But that's not. That I believe it's not, based on my knowledge. So this experience helped me to understand why waterways must be kept meandering, and blue and green must be integrated together. So this is a 5,000-year Chinese traditional understanding about the good water or the bad water. Right? Water must be meandered, must be integrated with trees, with vegetations. And there were 7 ponds in the villages, like this kind of pond. Now, of course, disappeared. This is another reference I remember based on my memory. And 7 ponds distributed in these very small villages. Villagers use it every day, gathering around the pond, telling their stories, have socials here. Whenever an unexpected drought happens, additional ponds will be dug to regulate water. And I personally participated in such a kind of emergent commune labor. Like this, I personally, working with my commune member, created this pond. Now that make me remember, make me understand why the Chinese farmers always think water is the treasure and should be collected from all directions. Instead of discharges water, you should keep the water, return the water. Water is treasure. Now that's why when you go to the mountainous area, you will see all this pond. They're just like a sponge, regulating storm water, save the water during the monsoon season, and recycle, reuse it during the dry season. This, when you look detail, you can see how many ponds, how porous the landscape. Now all these, in my village, all these are gone because we mechanize it, we design it, we grid it, we create a standardized so-called productive farmland. So this was my memory. Even life was very hard for me as a son of the landlord. The village called East Yu, named after my family. So Dong Yu was a Shangri-La. That's 1980s when I left the village. That's the last photo I can find at that time. So in 1980, I passed the national university examination as a national. I was chosen to enroll in Beijing Forestry University as one of 30 students in the entire nation to study landscape gardening. At that time, it was called gardening. Okay, it was a dream come true for me and for my family, because when I received, people always tell me, okay, you're going to create beautiful garden, rockeries, pavilions, houses. That's the thing I remember when we think about landscape gardening. That's the image. That's the 17th century beautiful garden. But when I finished the college, and I did, we draw rockery, we draw pavilion, we draw ornamental peonies and roses. But when I finished college and was starting my career of teaching and making gardens for the city, at that time, the city is small. So only the garden you can make, actually. Urbanization is not started yet, was not started yet. And so when I returned home, what I found is this kind of landscape. Suddenly, the white sand stream disappeared. My villages, the big trees disappeared, the landscape disappeared. Totally ruined. So I began to ask myself, was I meant to do something more instead of doing just a garden? How can you save the village itself, the landscape, the paradise in my memory? Now this is a white sand creek or white sand stream at that time. So I began to search for a new territory. I sought new inspirations, and I was accepted at the GSD in 1992, working with Carl Stannis, Richard Foreman, I was an ecologist, Irvin at that time, working with a very slow machine, GIS, Macintosh, GIS. I'm one of the first students doing and we'll often encounter McHugh. Actually, McHugh was teaching a studio at that time. I ran into him. And Michael von Wagner in the hallway. And Peter Law, of course, Peter Walker, Marsha Schwartz, and others in the hallways. So that's my experience in the gun hall. But down in the basement of the gun hall, so many books. That's really such a beautiful library. So as a concept of landscape and urban ecology, Spirn's Granite Garden, Design with Nature, Richard Foreman's Landscape Ecology, Design Human Ecosystem, such John Lau think about ecosystem at that time, you see, whole earthscape. And of course, Jane Jacobs' death, the death and life of Great American, and topophilia, and the experience of landscape. That's J. Appleton about beauty of landscape, and Kevin Lynch's, and J.B. Jackson's, and the genius loci phenomenology of landscape. So this is all downstairs. I spend most of the time downstairs reading. At that time, a copy of Xerox copy, one page is $1. That's too expensive for me. I charge too much. So I just really keep writing notes up a notebook. So design works by contemporary masters, including all these masters, Walker, Olin, MVVA, Haggs, Maya Lins, Marsha Schwartz, Peter Lutz, Chumi, inspired my right side of my brain. So I have left side, I have right side. I think that's the greatness at GSD, at his hall. You have science, you have the art, you have the design, you have people coming every week, every day almost. You get lectures. I almost attend any of them. So it was a time of great debate. Yeah. I found myself fascinated by the tension between design with nature versus design as political procedure, which Carl always used. Design is a defense process. Or McHugh said design is a vertical process, nature-based. It's a totally nature determined. Ecology versus art. So these are some of the debate you get immersed in at that time. I was haunted by two questions which have subsequently driven my entire career. First, conservation versus development. Yeah, in 90s. That's always a question. Conservation, development, dilemma. And sustainability and beauty, that's a dilemma. So today I still in the class, in Karen's class, I still hear the dilemma. People talking, oh, we need beauty or we need ecology, it's climate, So we have Edward Wilson here at Harvard Yard, at Harvard campus, in his campus. I like this quote, yeah? Destroying rainforest for economic gain is like burning a Renaissance painting to cook a meal. Of course, of course. But what if I badly need that meal? And what if I cultivate the land like this instead of like that? Now that's a design, okay? That's a pattern, that's design matters. So it's not just about yes or no, it's about how you do it, yeah? Or like that. Chinese cultivated this land for 2,000 years, and it's sustainable. It's sustainable. They retain the water on the slope, very deep slope, and on the delta area. This is Pearl River Delta area. It was a marsh. It was uninhabitable. Okay, it's difficult to cultivate, but eventually turned into a very productive and beautiful and biodiversity celebrated area. That's Pearl River Delta area. So it's a matter of design. Now that's why I come out this thesis. downstairs. You can still find the circular pattern in landscape planning with a case in South China. So how can we design and manage a landscape following certain patterns that can most or more effectively safeguard landscape-related process, while maximally providing possibilities for changes? So that's the key, I think, that's about design. Then how to do that? So I bet nobody here, no student here ever looking into these documentaries, these papers, unpublished papers downstairs, okay, downstairs. William Watts. He is the first guy visualized the population distribution in China, in US. Spatial analyze, turns the data into space, into spatial graphic language. This is his term, William Watts, a geographer, a theoretical geographer. And based on his research, so all unpublished paper, by the way, all unpublished. So I borrow the idea of a biologist, minimum cumulative resistance to calculate to create the surface. Basically, I don't want to go to too detail about the science. But how to define the point where you should, where is a baseline to define nature and culture, development or preservation. So I find this is a game theory. It's exciting game theory. John Newman from this campus also. Yeah. All stable process we shall predict. All unstable processes we shall control. He has a theory of security level and saddle points. Now that I combine these together, create this based on geographical information. It's a science. It's calculated. Okay, it's not drawn. It's calculated. Use fairly primitive arc-info. Stephen Irwin, I'm the only student doing this. Use very slow machine, and eventually I get a chance. I get a chance to go to Israel with Jack Benjamin. Yeah, it's this Israel redlands. So I create this kind of identifying the ecological security pattern. So where is the most important point, lines, area that you should protect it? Well, gives the most of the area for development, for change of the landscape. Yeah, both cultural, ecological, agricultural, urban sprawl. Now all these processes needed to go across the landscape, overcoming the resistance, some kind of resistance. Yeah. So under the basement, I'm in the basement of the gun hall. I created these fantasies. I mean, this an ecological utopia, how to create a harmonious landscape with several game player. Okay, you have the visual process, which Carl studies. You have the ecological process, which Richard Foreman always care about, and also agricultural process. We have to feed the population at that time. So all these together to create a harmonious landscape, ecologically healthy, safe for food, and also you can protect biodiversity, keep cultural integrity and ecological integrity. So with this utopia, and after graduating, I was recruited actually by ASLA at Laguna Beach. That was totally different, okay. I was able to work with Richard Law. Richard Law, he was GSD 65, doing luxury properties, new development and project in the booming Asian market. Life on the beach was very good, At Richard Law, I learned from him how to grade the landscape, how to design golf course, how to do this. So only 2 years, so I get really think I have to change because well, I was happily designing luxury properties and imagining the grandeur of new cities. I found that the land at home was under assault. It was the opposite of everything I have imagined for a eco-utopia. You see the tree being cut, the river being strengthened, built, the pollution everywhere, channelization, damming, cutting the tree and transplanting big tree from a rural area, dumping into urban area, and there's also the Baroque landscape everywhere in China at that time. In that time, you see, you can. So these are big squares. Yeah, they all learn from Versailles, from Baroque axis in China. That's Shanghai, Beijing, anywhere. You know, see, you can see. Now that's the time, booming time. And it turned out to be a national scale challenge. You can imagine, as that already flood happened every city, almost every city. At the same time, 400 cities out of 600, more than 600 cities get run out of water, shortage of water, pollution. At that time, 75% of surface water polluted. And at that time, already 50% of habitat disappeared. And certainly 80% of Chinese cities suffering air pollution. Then Carl Stanley talked to me and says that you will be the right person at the right place and at the right time. It is, you see. So I go back to China 1997, you can see the population just pick up. Urbanization, yeah, is a steep slope coming. So that's the time I went back to China, try to meet the challenge, to try to save, I call it save the world, save China, in terms of the environment, of course. And I believe, I believe I could make a difference. But I had little idea what else, what are the challenges that lays ahead, I actually meet 3 major challenges, even more than the challenge we discussed about. Clean the water is much easier when you talk about these other challenges. First, cultural challenges. When I come back to this, we had such a long tradition, 2,000, 5,000 year tradition Chinese culture. Strong pre-17th century gardening tradition, the classical Chinese garden. We're so proud of that. Right? We don't want to change anything. Yeah, so proud of that. And we have a social and political difference, which is totally different from here, from the US. Politically, yes, of course. Yeah, we have this different system. So what do you learn here? How can you adapt to that kind of system? And professional challenge. There was no officially recognized landscape architecture profession yet. Only a sub-discipline under the Soviet model of urban planning, the very strong planning, central planning system. So these are all big challenges. There's no place for landscape architecture, actually. Yeah, you have traditional gardening, you have planning, you have architects. The landscape been taken over. So to start, so I believe that we need a new profession belong to the 21st century. So I landed at Peking University, the best university in China, started the LA program in the Department of Geography. At that time, Peking University has the geography, because I think landscape should belong to geography, not gardening, not horticulture, not art. It should be the surface of the globe. Yeah. So I started with 3 students, only 3 students. But I have a very loyal colleague, Dihua Li. We've been here for together for 28 years. Yeah. Now we have our own building, okay, and we have since produced 1,200 masters and PhD students. This is our new building, celebrated just last year. So it's called the School of Architecture and Landscape. School of Architecture at Peking University. But here, on the wall, we put the school motto, recreating the land of peach blossoms. So peach blossom is another word for Shangri-La or paradise. I have always thought of where I grew up It's a small village with 7 ponds next to a stream shaped by 36 ancient weirs as a land of peach blossoms. And I believe that landscape architecture is a way to recover the lost land of peach blossoms. So I began to describe landscape architecture as the art of survival, as opposed to landscape architecture as a gardening art of fantasy and pleasure making. So when you look at the tradition here, we have a wonderful tradition, the Chinese elite high art. When you go to the Yanjing Library, when you go to the Asian Museum, what do you see is this art, okay? Rockeries, emperors, paintings, graphics, calligraphy, all high art. There's nothing about this, right? Landscape culture as the art of surviving from the land, which have different interpretation. Land is equal to land and its people. Well, landscape as high art, we call it sanshui, mountain and water, missing the field, okay? No agriculture, no field, no production. Yeah, so that's different. That's different, I find, yeah. So I was inspired by immersed. Don't ask us about your garden. Don't ask us about your bloody flowers. We are going to talk to you about survival. So that's what was my beginning to propaganda, to create a new identity for this profession back in China, and I coined a different word actually in Chinese. So we launched a new magazine because we have no place to publish at that time. Our publishing, my student publishing, was rejected because we talk different from the traditional thinking about those. So we created this magazine and called Landscape Architecture Frontier to promote a new philosophy and a new approach. And it was awarded by American Society of Landscape Architects as a media award. And I brought in top thinkers in the field to educate a young generation, and it began create a consensus. For almost 20 years, consecutively, every year we have an international conference. We bring all the speakers from GST, from global universities everywhere. Yeah, so that's the start. So actually, virtually, revolution. I tried to create a new profession, which I imagine to be able to carry on the task we needed to. And I felt that immediate action had to be done. Education, school, too slow. I felt that we have to do immediately to reverse the process. At that time, planning is to build, right? Population projection. According to population, you give the land. According to the land, you grid it and you put the infrastructure. Now that's the way of development, speed development, fast development. No ecology, no cultural heritage almost, yeah. So I want to reverse the process. So I launched this concept called inverse planning or negative approach. Reverse it. You have a film of positive and negative. So it's reverse planning, which means landscape should first. Give landscape first, okay? Which emphasizes protection of landscape security. Now I use the term, okay, landscape security, my invention here downstairs. Now become nationally Chinese accredited, Chinese accepted. So I realized that this could be a one-player game, okay? Here we have multiple player games. Democracy, of course. You have landowner, you have producer, you have ecologist. But in China, you have to think it's a one-player game. The only way to reverse the damage caused by conventional planning procedure was to convince the top leadership, the top decision maker, to change the policy. So I I began north side much earlier. So in 2006, when the Chinese policy come out to revitalize China's rural area, I immediately write a letter to, at that time, the Premier Wen Jiabao. And that, to my surprise and gratification, initiated the process of national security pattern planning and ecological red line regulations. Yeah, so that's 2006. And I was commissioned by this EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency in China, Chinese version, the Ministry of Environmental Protection. It's a pilot project, a national planning for ecological security pattern. Yeah, that's basically implementation of applying my theory here based on ecological security pattern to draw the ecological red line to protect the critical landscape and the ecological assets. And actually this year, until this year, it was officially announced by the government to become a law, become regulation, eco red line, eco red line. Yeah, you can imagine it take almost 28 years to really get it to be, to realize. Yeah, since the Protect Red Line was officially released just a couple of months ago. And also we're commissioned by the Beijing municipal government to do the ecological security planning for the capital, for Beijing. And it was much earlier approved, 2020, get approved, become law, become regulations, to stop the sprawling. Instead, sprawling, we say you need to take care of water, stormwater, you need to take care of biodiversity, you need to take care of culture heritage, vernacular culture, and you need to take care of future bicycle lanes, greenways. So this must be go first, which means what I think what's called ecological infrastructure. That's the landscape, the framework of the landscape. And before that, after that, you can develop the land. So that's basically the idea of ecological security pattern and negative planning. And the State Council has since issued 5 state regulations to safeguard the national ecological security pattern. It was officially on the Congress, People's Congress. So that's the political part of the design, I would say. So then about the culture, it is difficult. Even more difficult is the cultural change. So I realized that bad decisions were being made simply because of misguided mentality about urbanization and aesthetics. Aesthetic matter. And this morning, student asked, is beauty matter today? Of course. So beauty matters because it's a part of culture, right? It's a value. These need a cultural change. So I launched this called Big Feet Revolution. On the one hand, the Chinese urbanism tended to copy the infrastructure, what was built in the developed European and American cities. But with little concern, with little aware of the climate difference. China suffering the monsoon climate. So when you dump this great infrastructure, the pipe system, the pump system, which invented in European cities, it simply fail, because we are in the monsoon climate. So all these will fail. All these will fail. Use pipe system. Of course, you need a sewage. Believe me, I'm not against this technology, okay? But I'm not against industrial civilization. But certainly, you have to understand, this is a monsoon climate. Yeah? This technology, when you dump into Asia, East Asia, Southeast Asia, India, Malaysia, Indonesia, you will see they will all fail. But certainly China fell first because we experienced a fast urbanization earlier, faster. And this kind of manicured, I call it manicured little feet, great infrastructure fail at a massive scale, you can see. Now that's 2012. It's a capital. 79 people died in the capital. You can imagine on the street, on the street, in the car, because all the infrastructure, the drainage infrastructure, failed. So that's one thing about technology, little feet technology. And on the other hand, urbanization was largely a process of gentrification in China. For more than 1,000 years, young Chinese girls were forced to bend their feet in order to be able to be considered beautiful enough to marry certified elites. Now that's a long tradition. Foot bending, beautiful, rustic. That's the definition between rural and urban. Landscaping and city building by far are the most visible and extensive manifestations of the folly of civilization and aesthetic standards defined from above. Rural, urban, even fish is different. You see, fish is different. Elite, rustic, big feet, So that's a culture, that's aesthetics. The so-called city beautiful is actually the very reason of landscape and ecological dystopia. You can see ugliness, wasteful at a fast scale. That's channelize the natural river with marble, remove all the crops, replace with ornamental shrubs, and here you can see also, irrigating the lawn, removes the terrace, rice paddies, and removes the orchard and grows these we call ornamental, diseased, distorted species or cultivars. Architecture is the same. When you go to Shanghai, at that time, you will see this kind of architecture become so, welcomed by. So both little feet urbanism and little feet aesthetics are not only expensive, but also unsustainable. We use 50% of concrete and steel. We produce 30% of our carbon emissions, of course. But we only have 20% of, economic GDP. So a huge amount of wasted at this time. That's why we need a revolutionary change. So I advocate a big feet revolution, urbanism based on ecological infrastructure and big feet aesthetics. I even use the power of Mao, the powerful energy of revolution. I think you need to change it. You need to change it. This is my very recent publication, the book called Big Feet Revolution, and the new land of peach blossoms. We have a future, but not just a revolution. We need a beautiful future. So an alternative for this little feet urbanism is we need an ecological infrastructure based on ecology, provision, regulation, life-supporting, spiritual, and cultural services. But water is the key. So water, that's why I come to Sponge City. Water is the key for ecological infrastructure. So cities built upon water-centered ecological infrastructure are called Sponge City. So Sponge City is simply an ecological city based on ecological infrastructure, use nature, based on nature to solve the problem. So we have sponge catchment, sponge waterway, sponge farm, sponge town, sponge lake, ocean. Create the whole system deal with, because water is a core, water is a key. And it must be across the scale, from national scale to regional scale to local scale, and also way to the simple project, individual project. That's what in my mind, how can you solve the problem, the larger scale problem, but you have done at this project scale. So this is infrastructure I'm talking about. How can you design with nature based on this critical process? And to do that, to launch this revolution, I delivered over more than 300 lectures to municipal decision makers and ministers. Now, this is the scale of my lecture. You can imagine hundreds of mayors usually, even prime ministers among them. And this is a kind of propaganda. You have to make use of the power, this top-down system, to push this ecological thinking. That's the awareness of big feet revolution. And I give a public lecture also at mass media. About 200 million, you can imagine, people viewing my single lecture. This is my lecture. 200 million being viewed. In one single day, I got 8 million people watching this single lecture but that only create a kind of mass media reaction. But certainly, the key is to educate the top leadership. I mean, the mayors, the decision makers. So I actually contributed my time to 3 textbooks for mayors. This one, published 2003, and they printed 20 times, 1,100 copies. Yeah, I also sent them free. Yeah, and this one forwarded by President Xi. Xi is really a green, pro-green president. You see, he himself writes a forward for this called "Beautiful China." Literally, I put into my case also my build work in this mayor's textbook. I mean, all CCPC communist officials must read. This is a must read. 3 million copies. And this is a new textbook by the Ministry of Urban and Rural Construction, a textbook called Green Development, City and Nature. So this educates the top leadership, I mean mayor, each individual. But that's not enough. My text also being included in this national textbook for high school students. Now this is literally the culture of ordinary and the beauty of weeds, talking about ordinary culture, the vernacular, the cultural heritage, and also the ecology, the weeds, so not everyday ecology. And it's a project, the shipyard project, the only project in history being included in the textbook is a landscape project. Yeah. Certainly, I asked mass media. This is my actually 2008 very widely distributed article about future China's future garden city. I teasing this bird nest, CCTV tower and everything should be green. Should be green at that time because people are so furious about building this CCTV and this bird nest and this opera house. Yeah. So this call for a future landscape culture and adaptation and transformation of the unsustainable industrialized landscape to instead heal the planet, design the landscape to designing ecologies for holistic landscape services. And it must be at a larger scale and be able to be realized immediately, overnight. Otherwise, too late. So you have to invent a solution. I mean, technically also must be fast, easy doing. So this big feet revolution encounters 2 big challenges. So the first challenge is how possible is a nature-based solution can be engineered. We have the engineer, based on the technology, based on the industrial technology. How nature can be engineered. We know how to manipulate the little feet, but how can you create a big feet or make a big feet beautiful? Yeah? So it must be at a massive, easy working, low expensive, and effectively. So that's the first challenge. The second challenge is how can the rustic big feet be beautiful? We know tiny little feet beautiful, but how can the big feet also be beautiful? That's the 2 challenges. To meet the first challenge, the big feet revolution in action to create walking landscape. So I eventually come out, this is called a modular approach, inspired as monsoon adaptation wisdom. You imagine a farmer, very simple tool, they can create such fast scale landscape. virtually transforms the global surface. Simple, beautiful. So inspired by that, so I try to learn from the traditional wisdom, but the scientifies it. Design engineering models, but test it. This is a post-operational performance test, and eventually create a replicable modules, and use this module to create to allow a large-scale ecological engineering. This is the process. How to upgrade those traditional knowledge, such as terracing, ponding, diking and ponding, and islanding. Now, these are all ancient, very simple technique, but adapt to different kind of water situation. If dry land, keep the water, okay, terrace it. If too much land, too much water, like Pearl River Delta area, you create a pond dike system. If to the ocean or to the lake, you create an island, right? So that's the Aztec people, Mexico, it's the same, yeah. So it's adaptation to different kind of water situation, then we modularize it, create this system that easy working, easy to do. Because it's, from the source, from the water source, slow down during the process, keep the water at the source, slow down the process, and adaptive at the sink, right? When water too much, you need to adapt it. You should not fight against that. So for 20 years, we built over 500 projects in China, in more than 200 cities. Now, these are distribution of project, built project here. And certainly you need a big team like that, right? Because such a big scale. Now, this is our team, Twinscape, before COVID, 2018, I guess. So this social, cultural, and political advocacy created the momentum of landscape change and demand a big team and operate at a larger scale. I have to tell you that at Twinscape, we don't have marketing group. We don't have marketing system. Yeah, I tell the student today, there's a different way of fishing. Huh? You're fishing by your pole, you're fishing by net, but I said we should cultivate the fish, right? We cultivate the fish in the ocean, in the lake, then you have abundance of job to do it. Huh? Instead of looking for a job, you cultivate the job. Now that's why the momentum we created, that I get calls, we get many calls from the mayors basically to solve the problem, yeah, such as stormwater regulation, absorb excessive of water. You can imagine 65% of Chinese cities suffering inundation every year. How can you solve the problem? Big pipes, big tanks? No way, no way. Monsoon climate, yeah. A third of the precipitation pouring in one day, annual precipitation fall in one day. How can you handle by pipe system? No, landscape can do that. So terracing, ponding, islanding, you create a sponge right in the middle of the city, you can see, and be done in 1 year maximum, this case. Yeah, you have to finish, otherwise people will get impatient. Yeah, you have to do it. Yeah, we have to do quickly. Yeah, easy, like that's so this create this kind of a green system, sponge system. You even didn't get flooded, your people can use the space underneath during the dry season, above even during the monsoon season. Now you have thousands of hundreds of islands you can see create a sponge system to retain water, So 1 square kilometer in size, you can handle about 1 million cubic meter of stormwater. Basically, you can serve the area about 10 times of this area. Yeah, localize it. So this was before 2015. This was after, 5 years later. Yeah, and this is just one of such example. And we have a performance test. This is before. Marshland looks like. The property value is fairly cheap. Yeah. Flooded every year. And suddenly, here, 3-4 years later, So property value increased 500%. 500%, you can imagine. Yeah, so everyone happy and now becomes a center for the city. It becomes a center, a CBD. So Sanya CBD, because we solve the problem, you see. Multiple problems, habitat, birds come back, people can use the park, flood solved, yeah, and increase property value. Now this is another project we just 3 years ago. This is Nanchang in the Yangtze River Delta, Yangtze River middle reach. Here, it's the same idea. Transform the urban dump, this coal ash dump, into a sponge. Islanding. Islanding. No transportation of dirt, no soil transportation, localize it and on site. Create a million cubic meter of water capacity for the new city in this area. And it is certainly beautiful. It's resilient. Monsoon season, you have only 1 week or 2 week maximum monsoon season. So the area can be flooded, people, the park can be closed, this area be flooded. But as most of the time, this is a beautiful park for people to use, a daily use. Even in New York Times, in BBC or MIT Technology, cover page. People just love it. So, and it's done in also a very short period of time. Well, Gary just mentioned this park. I'm happy so he visited actually. And it was done by army, you can imagine. By army, easy working, easy to do, no skill needed. Cut and fill to transform a huge brownfield right in the middle of Bangkok. Bangkok was, flooded almost every year. So you have to adapt to this kind of climate. Such a beautiful park. No, and it's growing. You don't have to be perfect. It's growing. Let nature to do the work. Flood adaptation, embracing flood. Even flood, can be solved through landscape. Take flood as natural phenomena. This kind of engineering work you can see anywhere in China, in Africa, in Mexico, in Bangladesh, India, anywhere. So try to do this to try to protect the city from being flooded. No way. So we'll fail. Yeah, and removes concrete, go back to nature, recover it, and create a beautiful, resilient riverbank system. I call it a spongy system, sponge river. So not only is this become a park, but also it can filtrating the polluted water, and also certainly huge amount of biodiversity here. Again, much bigger river. Yeah. So we have hundreds of these kind of projects in China needed to be done. But unfortunately, people still doing this kind of thing. So when a year later, I will demolish it. So keep doing that. That's why keep the landscape architecture never lose job. You still have it. Yeah, because we have still some people believing that green infrastructure can solve the problem. Yeah, but eventually they fail and they call you. That's today. So this is before. You can see this is before and after. Yeah. So this is a landscape, simple and can be flooded. It was flooded a year ago, flooded, but easy to wash, easy to maintain, and virtually very little maintenance. What about water pollution? We have a serious problem global-wise. 85% of sewage global-wise untreated, running into the river. This is an image of Bangladesh. I was there. Bangladesh, this is a river. But anywhere in the world, China also, we have some. We now become better, but still most of the water, surface water, polluted. But basically, those are nutrients. It's not toxicating. Yeah? It's a nutrient. It's a phosphorus, nitrogen. So you can learn from farmers to recycle the water as a fertilizer, to irrigate it. Now that's why landscape saw as a living system. Clean the water, filtrating the water to turn the gray water into clean water. Meanwhile, you create the landscape. Now this is the case. Say 10 years ago, This is my oldest project here. I present, in this case, earliest project in Shanghai Expo. Terracing the landscape, filtrating the water, use vegetation, create, living machine. It's working very well. For 13 years, we measured it. For 13 years, it's performed very well, So what about this scale? What about 700,000 square kilometer ocean? The whole ocean is polluted. Fertilizer. Those are fertilizers. They're running off from the agriculture and the polluted ocean. So this is a pilot project in North China. Pilot project. We want to turn the coastal area into sponge and catch the stormwater runoff. Before they run into the ocean, you clean it. This is just a pilot project, of course, but it's about also about 20 miles in length. The coastal area, and it's so far it's working very well. Which means you can actually copy this, replicate at larger scale. What about climate change? It's going to have a huge surge. So people think that this can protect the city. So this is in Sanya, the wall was under construction, halfway done. Then I give a lecture to the mayor, the top leadership there. They believing in me now. They get trusted. I get trusted. So we demolish that. This was the site. You see the wall here. We demolish that. We let the water in instead of keep water out, and create a blackish water. This is salt water, the fresh water, the meet here together to create a habitat. This intertwined finger is actually create a habitat for mangrove to get established without being washed away. So that's a form following the process. That's the process analyzed and that's form created. And certainly it only take all 3 years we create this beautiful landscape. And certainly people love it. Birds come back, mangrove get established. This is Sanya. So what about this kind of massive scale seawall, flood of seawall? People like to build this kind of wall everywhere. But we studied, we do research, finds out that this is before the seawall, you see, after. During the seawall was built, after. So the seawall destroys the habitat along the coast. Why? Because the salinization. The wave come over sometime, during one day or a year, or every month something. So keep the salt here. So kills the vegetation, right? And beyond that, you have this erosion problem. The wave becomes stronger because you hit there's a strong, there's boxing. It's boxing. There's hardware. There's concrete. It actually causes erosion. So instead, we create a sponge, breathable seawall, allow water to go back, right? Remove the top part of the seawall, keep the base, so that the water will come back. But not only that, as the rendering, of course, that was before, this is after. So this permeable seawall, right? You actually become resilient. Resilient seawall. This is permeable. You see, permeable. So on the land, we create also sponge, because the tropical rainfall will eventually wash the salt back to the ocean. So that's recovering the habitat, and certainly this must be beautiful, must be used by people. Otherwise, nobody take care of. What about soil remediation? Letting nature to do the work. 60% of urban soil in China polluted. We don't have brownfield regulation like America. You have. That's too expensive, right? Too expensive to clean it. But we tested an ecological method. solution. We create ponding, we porous landscape, collect stormwater, let water to remediate, because water is just acid. The soil is alkaline. So once it come together, you create different habitat for biodiversity. All kind of species come back, native habitat. And so that's the early one, that's 2008. Now we have much bigger scale. This one is bigger, which I finished 2 years ago. Use the solid waste solid from steel factory, and also irrigated with wastewater, wastewater fertilizer, and not only eliminates the soil but also cleans the water at the same time. There's a terracing, ponding system, different kind of wetland come together. That's the whole solid waste dumping area transformed into a working landscape, purifying the water and remediating the soil. And we test it. We have the experiment. It's designed as an experiment. So you get data. You're collecting data. You continually, it's a learning process. So we are talking about transforming the whole green infrastructure, urban green infrastructure, into green. This is the scale. I'm talking about the whole drainage system here in Hainan Island. The whole concrete system was transformed in 1 year. Yeah, you can imagine, and it performed very well. The habitat get recovered, birds come back to the city, and people just love it. So finally, how to make a big foot beautiful? So that's another people were concerned. A big field can be beautiful. So this is a new aesthetics. I'm Spirn, I'm so honored to have her here. So it encompasses both nature and culture that embodies function, sensory perception, and symbolic meaning, and so on. And this is deep form. The deep form is shaped by the interactions of inner ecological process and human vision, which makes the underlying order visible and meaningful in human terms. Simple, if you use this just a very simple touch, you can make the big feet beautiful. So that's difference. Well, ladies know that. But different solution. Huge surgery work. You destroy the whole system. I make something beautiful. We call it beautiful, yeah, but not necessarily. So that different, that's a cultural value. But beautiful is not always ecologically healthy, right? So this is beautiful, but certainly not ecologically healthy. Ecologically healthy may not be beautiful. So that's ecologically healthy, but not necessarily beautiful. So that's how to combine them together. Now here is my clue. Okay, see here my solution. The timeless independence of culture and nature is most visible in the bond between peasants and their farmlands. The practice such as cut and fill, irrigate and fertilize, frame and access, grow and harvest, recycle and save, all of which embody some of the principle of new aesthetics that inspired my design. So I always getting excited by this, how farm, how they develop this kind of landscape. Look at it, how beautiful this is. How beautiful this is. How beautiful this is. How beautiful this kind of framing. Just simply frame it. Yeah. You didn't change anything. Not change the genetic, you didn't change the species, just frame it. So this is, I find my root, as a farmer, benefit from that. So that I apply these principles, how to turn the, instead of delicate, gentrified, I want rustic. This is rustic. This is my first build project, the Zhongshan Shipyard Park. To use rustic, grass, wilderness, healthy, big feet, not small feet, different aesthetics. This is framing, ordered speech, ordered messiness. This is messy, but suddenly it become beautiful because you ordered, you create this order. Still messy. This John Nossa uses this term. An ordinary rock, but when you flame it, it becomes special. This is a special rock, right? That's traditional value, traditional aesthetic, 17th century. This is frame it. A normal, fairly normal, a rock from local, frame it. Simple, productive versus ornamental. Too expensive, very cheap, inexpensive, productive, but can also be beautiful. Yeah. So these are just, these are some of them projects. I just don't want to go to too much of this. But the walking landscape, instead of being served, like the Shanghai Hotan Park, we produce clean water for us to use instead of irrigated, use pipe water. So that's difference. Producing walking landscape. For example, this is a filtrating process. Pond system. This is a pond system. Sponge is in Guangzhou. But there's beauty here, you see. Fairly simple, but walking landscape. Transformative instead of manicured. This is a project, as I said, the Zhongshan Shipyard Park. Transformative, just a simple ribbon can transform the messy landscape into poetic, beautiful landscape. And I don't know the English term here, but iterated and interpreted. Maybe you, Gary, find a better word for that. So that's how can productive landscape. So this is a hotel. This is our new hotel. We try to revitalize the urban area. I mean the rural area. Charles Wharton, we talk about agrarian agriculture, agrarian urbanization. This agrarian urbanization, agricultural urbanization. Now we have a couple villages like that doing right now, and just this will transform the agricultural landscape into a tourism site. And this bus stop also transformed. I mean, make it exciting. This agricultural landscape. So this everything was there. Everything was there, but it suddenly become elite. I mean, urbanized. This room charged quite expensive, 5-star hotel. Yeah. So I'm going to conclude. Looking back, it is clear that my village level landscape experience melded with modern concepts of landscape and urbanism, sustainability and aesthetics, and being on the shoulders of giants, empowered me to address some of the common challenges that our profession is facing today, from the national scale to regional scale to this site like that, transformed. So everyone, every day, people here in America, particularly, you care about the climate change. Of course, dry, hot, dirt, sphere, globe. Yeah? But think about that. Talk about 1 meter sea level rising. Every year you get a millimeter sea level rising. It's not a big deal. What if we dump 30% of the globe? That's the land. We have 70% of the ocean and 30% of the land, and turn this globe into wetland. I mean, not wetland, a wet bulb. We have a thermometer, say wet bulb and dry bulb. There's a dramatic difference. You can cool off. The wet bulb can cool off the temperature dramatically. Meanwhile, retains the water. So go beyond the sponge city, we say go to the sponge planet. This is a nature-based earthscape design. Now this term I borrowed from John Lyell. I would say 30 years ago. He invented this term, the globe. So while politicians negotiating a carbon neutral globe, I find myself thinking often of my roots in the village. It's a small little village. I think of King Yu, the first king of China. He know how to take care of the land. He know how to plan. He know how to divert water. He know take care of a design with nature, basically. Yeah. But I had, also, think like this king. How can you can solve the problem? Heal the planet, heal the earth, and live with nature. But I had learned to act like a peasant. These are peasants. Simple tools, he can transform the landscape, global surface, fastly, but simply low-tech, easy working. Beautiful at the same time. Thank you. Yeah, thanks.
Hello. Thank you. Is anyone not persuaded? You're a very persuasive man.
Thank you.
We've all learned about the Chinese Revolution in the 20th century, things that came from that, an important thing in world history. But I think we have a 21st century revolution. It's a one-man revolution. When your work becomes the basis for national policy, I think that's when you're really having impact. And that is just absolutely remarkable. One thing with respect to landscape architecture, which you didn't mention, but because you're so proud of your university, Peking University, but in fact, you have also helped another kind of part of the revolution of the Chinese universities, Beijing Forestry, Tsinghua, and others, to have what are now premier landscape architecture programs in the world. I'm going to stop here because we can only take a few minutes because it's getting late. I want to give Anne Spirn the floor because you've been so kind, and I also want to say that, like you, Kongjian, I also learned the origins of this work from in a classroom with Anne Spirn.
Yeah.
Yes, right around the corner. I remember after my book was published. Yeah. So
Room 109.
I want to go back to a quote, Kongjian, that you had of Carl Steinitz. Yeah. You will be the right person in the right place at the right time. And this was such an inspiring talk. I have so much to say, but I'm going to keep it short. It's really stunning, wasn't it, the work? And for those of you who are younger and just starting off in your careers, I think there's a power here in knowing your ambition and following your ambition, knowing your strengths, knowing your roots, in Kongjian's case in the village. But I don't want you to be, it's so easy to be overwhelmed by the work here and the amazing scope of it and the amazing impact of it. Kongjian, you are my hero. But so I want to just say a few things to take away from this. One is the power of a book. to reach, and a power of a book that's written in plain language, to reach politicians, to reach journalists, to reach the general public, and not just to talk to ourselves, but to get out there. I was just blown away by the letter to mayors, the book. And you notice what he said? He sent out free copies to the mayors. And that was actually a very good marketing strategy. He says he doesn't have to do marketing. Well, you know, they all have the book. And I thought back, I spent my first 5 years after school, master's degree at Penn, working in Ian McHarg's office. And Ian McHarg wrote Design with Nature. And it reached a general audience. And it, even in the recession of the early 1970s, McHarg did not have to market. The work came to us. So that's, I think, a strong takeaway. Don't just speak to each other, speak to the world. Secondly, the power of a project that reaches people on an experiential level. Kongjian's landscape designs are about education. He didn't talk about that, but I had the good fortune to go to the wetland park in Tianjin in a morning when the older kids were in school, and the preschool kids were out there with their grandparents. It was a nice sunny day in the fall. The many ponds, were there 7 or more? 21 ponds. But they were different depths, and there were different ecologies. And there were very discreet, not overwhelming, little signs in the landscape that explained the ecology. And these kids were, and the grandparents were just having a marvelous time. Some of them kind of poking in the water, some of them just walking around. And I thought, there is going to be a future generation of landscape ecologists and landscape architects, right? I mean, that is very powerful if you think about your design work as speaking to people and as powerful persuasion through experience. Another takeaway, and you don't have to be Kongjian Yu, you know, with all of this grand work to accomplish this. Another takeaway, and we don't have time to talk about this today, but Kongjian mentioned once the words design experiments. And I think one really important thing to take away from his work is the intimate connection between the university and the professional office. And the design experimentation that takes place in the university, which then gets transferred into the professional office, and then there are students doing master theses and doctoral theses coming back and doing evaluations. You said performance tests. Coming back, those tables that you saw in charts measuring the various chemical composition of the water, those were done by students in Kongjian's department. So there's this intimate relationship. The design experiments aren't just you do an experiment and you walk away. You design the landscape in the first place as an experiment, knowing that it's going to be studied later and the subject of, literally, of master's theses. And so in Kongjian's office in Turretscape, I went in and he showed me this whole room that was filled with blue-bound volumes of master's theses and doctoral theses. And they're all so intimately related to the work of the office. If you look at Design with Nature, and you look at the cases that illustrate the chapters in Design with Nature, 1/3 of them were studios at Penn, 1/3 were professional projects at Wallis McHarg, and 1/3 were a combination of the two. And Kongjian has taken this idea of the research office and this intimate relationship between the university and the professional office to an entirely new level. But it's something that we can all do. You know, he started a whole new university, a whole new department in Peking University. But the takeaway, there are a lot of takeaways in what Kongjian talked about today. So don't be intimidated by how extraordinary the work is, because there are lessons for all of us in it. And we don't all have the good fortune to have a place to go in and open up a whole, you know, new approach to the profession in a huge country with millions and millions and millions of people. I think that I should probably stop here. But thank you, Kongjian, from the bottom of my heart. And I know I'm speaking for others as well about how inspiring your talk was and how wonderful it was that you took us from your boyhood to the present. It was a very generous, spirited talk, one of the best I've ever heard. So thank you, thank you.
Thank you, Anne. Thank you very much, Anne. I would just say that I can imagine that your university and my university would have a set of boundaries which wouldn't allow for the porosity between teaching and practice that you have perfected in Peking University. But I want to say that, and students have heard me say this, that practice is always real, and consequences prove it out. And school is always speculative. But in my view, we have to have speculative practice and real school. So both are speculative, both are real. You've perfected the combination. We won't be able to do it quite that way. But thank you for a model that, you know, maybe is replicable in other places in the world.
I guess so. I think so. Yeah. I mean, India, Africa is a vacuum land for landscape architecture, virtually. Right?
The opportunity is there.
Yeah, opportunities because it's a globe. So we have to solve the global problem. It's a global climate is become global. I think landscape architecture will become global.
Thanks to you. Okay, we're going to close. Thanks for hanging out with us tonight. It's been a bit of a party. And thanks to this brilliant man.